Hey, what's going on, fam? Thanks for tuning in again to this daily walk, and it's brought to you by Kingdom Life Clothing, gear for the belief in you. And this is where we just chop it up. We want to navigate and follow God and seek the right path and seek God's kingdom, right? And I had happened to just be, thinking about while I was reading through Colossians and a few other books in the Bible. It talks about putting on Christ. It talks about putting on the character, and I'm thinking about how does that really look? I mean, what is it? Because a lot of times we can look outside of ourselves, and in ministry, people can tend to compare and talk about others and saying who's doing what. But really, we're called to really self-manage, right? We're called to take care of what God has told us to do and be obedient and live our lives out from the inside out. And I think sometimes we can get caught up into looking at what other people are doing rather than taking care of what God has asked us to do, because it's going to show in the way you live, in your character, in your conversation, right? And your conduct. So just thinking about in Colossians, it talks about putting on Christ. And it also talks about removing the old man. So what does that look like in your life? And how are you approaching that? One of the things I can say is that we continually have to be reminded by that, because of course, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. There's always spiritual warfare. And that's a lot of times with our flesh and our old man and our thoughts. So to put on Christ means to take on his nature, to live as he lived and think as he thought and as he loved. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to understand how Christ lived and what he also has commanded us to do. In Romans 13:14, it says, put on Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. Of course, that is easier said than done. Let's keep it real. But before you can put on Christ, you have to take off the old you. What does that mean? That means turning away from how you normally would react to things, like whether it be pride, it's anger, lust, selfishness, unforgiveness. You see, now you can understand that there is a difference. Before, you may have been doing that, but now that your eyes are open and you begin to follow the Lord, you should start seeing a difference. See, we are taught to put off our old self and put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. So, it's like you can't wear two sets of clothes, right? Putting on Christ means that you're changing your clothes. Now, when you're in his word will renew your mind. His spirit will transform your heart, and his truth shapes your behavior. So every time you open up scripture, you're putting on a piece of God's nature: wisdom, patience, compassion, and strength. So I want you to think about that, my friend. Just think about your own conduct when you're challenged and you're looking at others, or you're having issues, because you may have the right to come to a conclusion about something that's going on around you. But let's remember what the Lord tells us to do. The Lord says that we should go to him, go to his word. And there's a particular scripture that is really, it's you really need God's help to go through it, but it can be done. And I want you to check it out.